Now, I already spoke about this subject on my other channel, the gaming one, but I talked about it from a gameplay perspective. Now I want to touch about it from a philosophical perspective because this picture is getting a lot of traction online. The debate around it is very heated, and I want to analyze it a little bit, right? So you have this picture where someone says a public service announcement. Again, as if woke people can do any type of service for the public. Absolutely ridiculous. But moving aside, if you have an opinion on wheelchairs in a fantasy role-playing game that isn't oh neat or representation matters, kindly keep it to yourself because you're either ignorant or a complete jackass. So the first thing that upsets people is this attitude that you need to think like me because I have discovered the reality. I have gained knowledge of the truth. I have communed with the divine. And if you disagree with me, you're a problem. You're an evil person. This is the way of thinking of religious extremists. I grew up with evangelicals and they had like the same type of idea. It's like, well, they understand Jesus. They read the Bible. They know what Jesus wants. And basically what Jesus wants is what they agree with. And if you disagree with them, you're not just disagreeing with them, you're disagreeing with the Lord. And if you're disagreeing with the Lord, then you're a person that needs to be excommunicated, right? So it's like this mentality, this arrogance that is being on display is the first thing that infuriates people. The second thing, and this was very accurately presented by a commentator on Twitter, is that this whole issue is a clash of ideology between communists and normal people. And this is how they view art and entertainment. So normal people, they view art and entertainment as a thing to relax, a thing to unwind, a thing to disconnect from the real world and entertain yourself after a hard day at work. And the art and entertainment, they have certain rules. They're not explicit. People don't really know how to articulate the rules, but they kind of get it in a way. So when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, the rules are that everything is supposed to be cool, everything is supposed to be over the top. You know, the women are supposed to be insanely beautiful. Like you have these big titty elves and you got these barbarians that can uproot a tree and swing the tree trunk. Like it's supposed to be exaggerated, over the top. You are the type of guy with the sword that's fighting against a dragon the size of a building, right? So it's fantasy. Now, this is what normal people consider the game, and it's how the game was considered up until recently. The way communists consider the game is not as an end goal. Again, like the end goal is to unwind and relax. No, communists view the game as a means to an end. And they view almost every human interaction as a means to an end, right? Because everything in existence must serve the end goal. It must serve the perfect vision of the progressive society. So what is the vision, right? Like, what are we talking about? Well, in this case, the vision, or the cause, if you will, is fairness and representation. And fairness and representation are ambiguous things, but everything in life, absolutely every single human activity has to have fairness and representation. And you will wonder, well, what's wrong with that, right? Well, the first thing is that they don't actually get to define what fairness and representation is. But that is not even the worst of it. The worst of it is that they want eventually the government to regulate fairness and representation. So, in other words, they want the government to regulate every aspect of human activity. Like, there is no more privacy. There's no more private life that you do. There's no more you are with your friends playing Dungeons and Dragons in your own bedroom. No. The government needs to regulate you and your friends playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like, this is what we're noticing with the ADL recently. They want to regulate gamers. Like, they don't want two people to play Pong on the computer without some entity, some AI, someone regulating that. And of course, everything is done for the purpose of fairness and representation, right? To remove hate speech, to remove this, to remove that. But in order to accomplish it, you need to be spied on. Now, once that happens, once everything is within the state, nothing is outside the state, nothing is against the state, and you have achieved a society where the government has its tentacles in every aspect of a person's life to regulate for fairness and representation, then the communists want to take over the government, right? They want to be in power. So they want to justify the existence of this almighty God, like create the one ring where Sauron gets to control all the other rings, and then they want to have that ring. And this is the whole grift, right? Like, this is why they advocate and they care so much about this shit. Because, like, if you're thinking about it, how likely is it that you're ever going to even be in the position where this conversation is actually going to take place in real life? Like you're sitting at a table playing Dungeons and Dragons, and you have a friend that's coming over, and, you know, he's in a wheelchair and he wants to play, but he also wants his character in the game to also be in the wheelchair. How likely is that event going to take place? I mean, it's not impossible, right? But it's incredibly unlikely. I'm willing to bet that most people who listen to this and play Dungeons and Dragons never encountered it, right? Like I played with a friend of mine that was also disabled, and in the game he didn't play as a disabled character, right? So in order for the stars aligning, and the probability of you being faced with such an event is probably 0 point something percent. So the question is, why are they talking about it? Well, they're not talking about it because they're legitimately curious to see how people would react with this. What they want to know is if you have the correct thinking. They want to know what's in your heart. They want to know, are you with them or against them? And you will notice that they have all sorts of litmus tests. Again, like situations that are insanely unlikely, but they want to know how you would think in that situation. Like, for instance, they will say, if you date a woman and then in the bedroom you find out that she has a cock, are you going to suck it or not? And if not, it's like, but why not? Are you transphobic, right? Like, the question isn't like, are you actually going to get into that situation and how are you going to behave? No, the question is like, do you believe that trans women are women? So if you do believe that, then by all means, the person in front of you is a woman, you've been dating her, so like, why wouldn't you, right? These are purity tests. They're moral questions to know if you are part of the clique, if you are part of the group. They generally like do not care about anything else. They do not care about disabled people playing Dungeons and Dragons or not. That's just a vector. That is just the medium that they can get their ideology across. And also the final thing, which I had many people with disabilities messaging me after making the previous video, and all of them were incredibly offended by this, because they noticed that the communists want to create their disability as an identity, especially a political identity. And they find that to be abhorrent. They don't like that. At least the one that messaged me. Like, I'm pretty sure that they maybe other people that think differently. But it makes sense. Like, when I think about it, all right, so imagine that you happen to be in a car crash, right? Like, it can happen to anyone. It can happen to you. It can happen to your loved one. Like, this is something that is not within your control, right? Like, you're driving your car and someone just rams into you. You couldn't avoid them. And you wake up in the hospital and you're disabled, right? Now, I personally, and many other people, would like to do our best in order to move on from that mentally. Like, we don't want that to define who we are. We don't want that to become our identity, right? Like we understand the situation and the bad luck that life has given us. And of course, you know, we would appreciate if society can accommodate with ramps and whatnot. But like, you wouldn't want that to be your identity. You wouldn't want that to be who you are. While in this game, based on Dungeons and Dragons and the rules that were made for the wheelchair, is that if you're a druid and you shapeshift, you actually, like your animal form also has the disability. And it's like, okay, so you're basically saying that it's not just a disability of the body, but now it's like a disability of the spirit, right? Like, it's such a thing ingrained into the person's identity that even in a fantasy world, they can't escape. And this is where you have the biggest outrage, right? Because many people, again, even people with disabilities and people who have others in their families with disabilities, do not like this way of thinking. We believe that this way of thinking prevents growth and is harmful for the individual. Like, to try and instruct someone like that, you know, like imagine you have your father that just got out of the hospital from a car crash, and you're trying to explain to him, well, now this is part of your identity, father. This is who you are now. Like, do not try to move away from this. Like, this defines you now. It is very mean-spirited, I would say. Like, it's evil. It's absolutely evil, right? I don't know any other way to call it out, but this way of thinking, I genuinely believe that it's pathological. And many people agree with me. And this is why you have the controversy on Twitter, right? Like, there's people that disagree with the mentality of the communists. And then there's the communists that defend their ideology because, again, like for them, it's not about standing up for people with disabilities or trying to make life more inclusive. No, like, they are pushing an agenda. And the agenda is to get the government or institutions to regulate every aspect of human society, including that of a board game that you're playing amongst your friends in the privacy of your own bedroom. So that then, once everything is regulated, once the tentacles are everywhere, they can seize control. And they view that is going to cause a much better society. But as we saw in human history, it does not. So let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I'll see you in the comment section. Of course, if you want to support the channel, there is a link into the pinned comment. It takes you to my Subscribe Star or Patreon. And I'll see you guys there. Take care.